Hi, guys. This is Sergio with Buy and Sell with Serge in Residence Realty. And today I have the great pleasure of being with Brian Guerrita to ask him a little bit of what you should be doing if you are a commercial realtor who's trying to expand their footprint in the creator space, right? We're trying to make the most of social media. So, Brian, thank you so much for sitting down with me. Thank you. Brian, I'd have to ask you a question. I want to ask you three, right? And the first one that I want to ask is, when did you realize you wanted to make your social media presence grow in commercial?
Honestly, I just fell into it. I got interest in seeing one of the developments going up, and I said, you know what? Let me do some research, see what's going on, and then started diving into that. Then started making content. Then started talking about the economy, where things are happening. I like talking. Really, and deep down inside, I'm a huge nerd when it comes to all this. So I love looking at the numbers, the financials, what are things, how do they interconnect, and then one thing led to the other, and just stumbled upon that, and I was like, all right, so let's how do we can do different iterations of it.
Awesome. One of the things that I love about your content is your man on the street, on location, reports of what's going to be happening, right? I have a two-parter on this question, right? One, what made you think that that would be a good piece of content, right? And the second, you are extraordinarily well informed when you're talking about these things. Could you share with us some of the sources of information you have? For example, you always have great insight on what's happening in zoning and what future plans are going to be happening. So is it just stuff that you're getting from the zoning board public website, or are you talking to like architects or people in the business who are giving you a little bit of insight of what's happening?
It's honestly, it's a combination of things. So it's talking to developers, talking to architects, having that network and relationship to go to and use them as a source of information to guide you. So I've had people ask me about how do you get the source of information. Obviously, if you're going to go drive by a development, you can Google, see what's going on in that development. You can pretty much pull that information. But if you want to get really intricate, go into the weeds of it, it's good to have relationships with these professionals that you can go to, ask them questions, figure out what's going on, see what they can give you. And then from there, you can kind of iterate or see what type of content you want to do, if that's the type of content you want to make. And honestly, most of the stuff that you can do, like if you're looking at development, the goal is to make it creative. There's people who talk about developments. There's top luxury realtors, top brokers that speak about it. So the biggest thing here is finding out what works for you when you're creating content, how you feel naturally. Do you like creating content that way? And seeing how to do it and iterate on that and make the variations. Because what I cover, a lot of people cover that. A lot of people talk about these things. So it's about finding out what makes your content unique and being consistent with it. 'Cause that's the most important thing of all this. You can talk about real estate, you can go into the trends, you can go into the data, but how can you break it down to a point where it's simple, and then how can you do it to a point where it's not it's a process that you can follow that's consistent for you. Some people are doing long form YouTubes and stuff like that.
No, what I like is the fact that you do break down these concepts, into a very, how to say, a very consumable type of format, where you are not really using a lot of jargon, which you guys were talking about earlier today, that sometimes you'll alienate an audience simply because, you're just using many terms that are, you need to be deeply in the business to know, right?
Mhm.
So I really enjoy the fact that you can communicate with people that way. And the consistency thing, how many times, I guess, a day or a week do you suggest that people be posting?
I think the best is, honestly, it's depends on what type of content you're looking to make. There's people who will do, for example, like they'll do a news thing that just came out. For example, like the Bright Line came out, it came on Channel 6 or whatever. They'll put in the green screen behind them, and it's simple and that works for them, and then that hits. So it's finding out what type of content you want to make, what makes sense, and then honestly, if you can do 3 pieces of content, that's fine.
Per week or per day?
About per week. Yeah.
Week.
Yeah. If you can do it per week, it has to be manageable. The key here with social media, it's how to create content that you can do consistently and not get fatigued, because you can easily get fatigued doing this if you're not being consistent. Because you got to come up with ideas, you got to do research, you got to sit down and figure out the script, how you're going to word it, how you're going to angle it, what's going to be, the hook, how are you going to get things going. So it's important to really digest and then figure out your schedule. And us, as we're in the business, it can easily pick up from one day to the next, and how you're going to have time, so it's like really trying to, be organized. I try to do at least 2 to 3 times a week.
Yeah, like you said, in this business, commercial is known for super slow sales cycles and times where you're doing a lot of repetitive tasks, and then all of a sudden everything's due at once, and like now and phone calls and LOI, 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 boom, boom, boom. You're trying to go over things, and making that time for content, I guess, is one of the challenges. Which brings me to my last set of questions, right? What are the three biggest challenges you found in order to make your channel grow, or that you find other people, because I know you help other people with this, have run into, and the solutions that you have found work best for you?
90% of all the problems that content creators have is all mental. And that's the biggest thing. And the reason why I say that is because when I first started creating content, I got too caught up into the professional jargon. I want to look a certain way. I want to present it because, people are going to perceive me a certain way. I got to make sure that, the content is look extra professional, extra this, extra that. Well, I got to a point where I said, look, I know the information. I know it better than maybe some of these guys are out there, and I can explain it just as good as they can. Let me try to find my own way of doing it. And I think the biggest thing is when you're creating content, you're starting out, don't have the expectation that things are going to go up immediately. And anytime you're doing something new, especially in this business, before it goes up, you have to start going down. So it's going to go down, it's going to go up, but getting it out of your own head. And sometimes when you're creating content, your professional colleagues are looking at you and they're like, hey, like, what are you doing? Like, why are you creating all this content? Like, that's cute. And the thing is, do you see the vision that maybe they don't see? And then blocking all that. And that's most of the issue there. It's just
I do think that there's a bit of a change in that perspective happening right now in commercial, but it's a slow one, like you're saying, because, most of these brokers are a little older and we have a different, more conservative demographic, right? So that's the biggest challenge you're saying is no paralysis from over-analysis and just jump in there and get it.
Yeah.
I guess I want to finish off with one last little bonus opinion of yours. What do you think is the most pressing issue in commercial real estate in Miami?
The biggest one. I think the biggest issue we're going to see now is affordable housing. I'm very curious how the Live Local Act is going to play into all these new developments.
It's really going to change the landscape. I hope it helps smaller development come up, right? So I started in the development side of things. I was a development apprentice for 3 years, buying land, designing things with architects, et cetera, et cetera. But the biggest hurdle that I've encountered in order to become a developer myself is that, you get priced out when you can't add density, right? And so, I think that maybe the Live Local Act will help with that. But back to you, sorry.
Yeah, I agree with you. And that's the issue that we're going to face. Will the affordable housing bill that got passed, is that really going to help? Is that going to really incentivize development? These are all things that we're going to have to see. Miami has a major supply issue, but how sustainable is Miami's current trajectory? I know right now we're hot. Eventually, at some point, it's going to have to cool down. We're starting to see that right now in multifamily. The numbers are not penciling out. Insurance is too high. The cost of doing these developments just doesn't make sense. And like you said, the density is important, but at the end of the day, I think we're going to have an affordability crisis. Let's see how the economy shapes up in 2025. We start going to unemployment, and that starts happening, which a lot of these economists are predicting. And will rates drop? I don't really see the Federal Reserve even dropping rates. And the reason why I'm bringing rates up, because that affects everything. There's no incentive for them to do it. There's no economic downturn.
The opposite is really the incentive that needs to happen. We need to bring those rates up in order to try to curb this inflation a little bit and create an adjustment. Well, Brian, it's been an absolute pleasure interviewing you today. I learned so much at this event here at Nucleus. This is a wonderful space. Like I said before in my little post, you'll see if you check out my story. This is similar to HGAB, which is a creator space where they have places for photography, video, podcasting, etc. Except this one's a little more polished and more oriented towards professionals. It's in the Grove and it's in a great location. If you guys have any questions about Nucleus, let me know in the comments or the DMs. You guys got to check out Brian's super informative posts. He's always on my feed. I'm always looking at it, I love it. You're going to love it too. It's a very simple, straightforward, and very informative posts. And if you have any questions about this space, about commercial real estate or real estate in general, just let me know in the comments or the DMs. And always remember that buy, sell, rent, or invest, Sergio always finds the best.